Rhonda, if we're ready, why don't we get cracking? People strolling, things strolling. Why don't we stand for the pledge, followed by the prayer, then we'll start the meeting. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
God, we're so thankful for this beautiful morning. Please help us to make wise choices and listen to you. In your name, amen.
So I'll call this special meeting of the Parks Board to order. The business for today is for the board to decide what companies they want to try to do interviews with, if we decide we want to do interviews at all, quite honestly. And I don't know that there's any real methodology to that. I'm willing to go however the board wants to go. If there are companies we want to exclude, if there are companies we want to include, I'll leave it up to all of you to decide what approach you want to take. So if anybody wants to start with discussion, maybe the thing to do would be to start with agreeing on what everybody has put down as the costs. In terms of, because there was some confusion on that at the last meeting when we were opening them as to what are the costs. So let me tell you what I found the costs of the proposals to be, and if you guys found something else, gosh, correct me. So starting with the master plan, the TSW Cornerstone Structure Point bid had a range of between $60,000 and $120,000. I just found a range for that.
Which one was that again?
It,
Okay. Yep.
The Troyer Group, I had $89,000. McKenna, 93,500, and Triad, and I was a little, I think, in my opinion, Triad had, gave us a combined bid for both projects, and that was $80,000.
Yeah, I think we need to clarify that. I was in reading through the proposal, I wasn't clear if it included both or just the extension plan, I think it was.
And when you look at the cover, it says both.
It does, but I couldn't see the detail for
Right.
the extension in there. I think it was the extension, and yeah, the extension.
Right.
I didn't see any detail related to that. I think one of the other things.
Let me finish the bid, the costs, and
Yeah.
then we'll start discussion. For
Okay.
looking at the Chinworth end, the JPR bid was $252,340. Troyer was $165,862. RQAW was $300,000. And then again, Triad looked to be $80,000 as a combined bid.
What was that for Triad?
Again, we were looking at $80,000 was the only cost I saw in
Yeah.
the
We had
package.
a discussion in the,
I'm sorry, could you clarify?
I'm Stu Safka with Triad Associates, and I responded to Rhonda Hessler in an email based on what you guys had as far as costs, and I know this is why we're here in this discussion right now. We based it off of your ARPA funds, and I emailed to her, and I said we would do an 8% and charge off of the $750,000 that was to go to the extension. That somehow didn't make it into that to clarify, but I did say here that that's what we're doing. The $80,000 actually is for the plan, because that's what you also receive from ARPA funds to go to that. And I believe we looked through your comprehensive plan from the county, which did say, I think it was 75,000 or something that you guys were looking at and targeting. So we're trying to stay in that range, and that budget fits your guys' budgets.
So, just to clarify, your extension was 8% of the 750.
That'd be
for-
60,000 for your
planning
study design.
purposes.
For the study design of the Chinworth extension.
Okay.
Because that's what it had asked for in the RFQ, was it actually a study design, and the deliverable was a preliminary plan, so.
Okay. So,
Sorry for that
no,
confusion,
no,
but
just as
that's
long as
what,
we understand exactly what we're talking about. So the master plan is 80 and the Chenworth extension is 60.
60,
Okay.
yes.
And I think that's, my comment wasn't to, what related to that was, let's review, what did we specifically ask for in the RFP? Because I think there was some confusion on, was it just a request for the design for Chenworth, or was it also the request for extension? Because some of these included both.
Well, we asked for, my thought was what we asked for, and obviously sometimes when you put stuff out, everybody sees it differently than what you thought you put out.
Right.
Was that we asked for the design and engineering of phase one, and then the design and engineering of alternate two, or alternate one, and the same thing for alternate three, but we also, as they corresponded with us, some of them said, well, Ken, do you want potential construction costs? And I said, well, if you can give us an idea of what we're looking at, we would very much like to know. So we start having an idea in the back of our heads what all this is gonna cost.
Right, okay.
Yeah. And it wasn't clear to me as I read the proposals for the extension, what they were really including in the cost.
Yeah,
Right.
whether it was just design, or whether it's design and construction, or design and management of construction, but not construction.
Yes, because some of them very
Yeah.
definitely had construction management baked into their costs.
Correct, but that doesn't necessarily mean construction costs, right?
Right.
So, okay.
Right. Since we're talking about Chenworth, why don't we stay on Chenworth? What other comments do you have about the bids in terms of, again, who we want to move forward to? And quite honestly, as a board, if we decide that our RFP wasn't adequate and we didn't get the responses we wanted because we didn't maybe write exactly what we wanted, we could certainly, I think, rebid this, could we not? If we felt that was necessary?
Yeah, you can rebid it.
Not that we want to, mind you.
It's not ideal just because, you know, it's kind of like you're playing poker and you made everybody lay their cards down and now you're
Right.
asking them to play another hand of poker with the same cards. So, yes, it's not ideal. You know, my guess is you won't get near the response on the next go around.
Okay,
But with that said, you know, there's got to be some resemblance of comparison, because right now I feel like we've got apples and oranges that we're trying to compare from a price perspective, but there's not a clear scope. Now, you know, I don't know what the legalities of how much, obviously we could go through an interview process to help maybe clarify what's in everybody's scope, but are they gonna tell us what we want to hear after the fact, now that the bids are open and they know the information?
right. I completely agree. Yeah, it looks like we have a range of a low of 60,000 to a high of 300,000.
So I had a question specifically on the JPR Greenway extension. And looking at the costs, just to clarify, was this is this just design and planning, construction management, but not construction costs itself?
I think there's somebody from JPR online, is there not?
Yeah, there is. I'll let Mike Gold take it though. He'd be the one handling the project. He's in this meeting as well, so I'll let him take it.
He's off of mute, but we can't hear you if you're speaking.
Yeah, he's speaking. Hold on. Yeah. Hold on. He's gonna come join me. Yeah, I couldn't hear him either.
He's on his way
Yeah.
to clarify.
Sorry, my microphone wasn't working. You are correct that it is just the design and construction management and not the construction itself.
Okay.
So I think we had a question as well. So like alternate two is 3 times the base bid, but I know the base bid is like 0.8 of a mile, and alternate two is like almost 6 miles. Is that truly accurate in terms of what you were bidding?
Yeah, we figured we would, fix any redundancies, in the first section and be able to apply that to the second section, which would save you some money. But then there are some other, additional items in the second phase of culverts and other hydraulic analysis that would bump it up a little bit.
Okay,
But again, this doesn't include construction costs, which is probably proportional to the length versus
Right.
management and planning
Correct.
might not be.
yeah.
Question, I guess I'm wondering whether or not you guys ought to look at which of these bidders you would like to interview, because I'm not sure having them answer questions
Yeah.
with all their competitors
Yeah.
online is necessarily fair to everybody from a perspective of what's part of the process.
Okay,
You know, I think looking at what we have here, whether you want to interview them all, or whether you want to make some selections of who from what they've provided thus far kind of meet the criteria or you feel would best fit what we're trying to accomplish, and then probably going through an interview process with those selected offline as far as individually. Rhonda, how would that work? If they wanted the whole group to be there, would that be a closed meeting, going to be an executive meeting? How would that be that? Okay. Right, they're just going to gather information, ask questions.
Right.
I just don't want to have any of our bid participants feel like, you know, they're having to undress in front of their
Yeah.
neighbor here,
Yeah.
Yeah.
from a perspective of answering questions that we have.
well,
That might make sense because I look at this and I'm not a construction person per se, you know, there's a lot of questions I have before I think we make a wise decision.
I think that, yeah, I agree that makes sense, but I think we also want clarification though, what that cost is related to or not.
Well,
Yeah,
yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
if there's, you know, that one I think is pretty standard.
Yeah.
But, you know, I guess I just wouldn't want to go into a whole bunch of
No, agreed.
details that all of a sudden the next guy is going to say what that guy said plus.
yep.
No, yeah.
Well,
Well,
my immediate thought is there's some exclusion maybe based on cost estimates, right? That are either well beyond what we're budgeted for. You know, whether it's the design and planning phase, and we don't know fully construction yet on some of this, but, well, we do actually on Chinworth Bridge, we know what we have, so.
Yeah.
So I think some of these, some of these proposals have costs that maybe not, not within the scope of what we're doing.
What was the TSW cost for the Chinworth extension? I didn't get that as Robert went through it.
TSW, is that
Yes.
Troyer?
60 to 120, I think.
Hold on, I want to make sure, I didn't have one labeled as TSW, so I want to
No,
make
I-
sure.
Have a
TSW Cornerstone?
That was a master plan.
Okay,
Yeah,
so there was no TSW for the Chinworth then?
correct.
No.
Okay.
If I'm not mistaken, two of the firms submitted proposals for both projects. And then we had two firms that had submitted a proposal just for one project, but in both cases. So there's a total of 6 firms. Does that sound right?
I believe. Well, no, there was 7.
Yeah. So-
7 firms.
I have 7,
7.
packets here.
Now, one of the firms, Troyer, has 2 packets.
Right,
One for each project.
one for each
One for
project.
each project,
Yep.
yeah.
Oh, so you're talking 6 groups?
Yeah,
Okay.
6 groups, yeah.
Yep. I mean, yeah, so I think we can either go by inclusion, right? That from a cost standpoint, yes, we do want to interview them and then talk about either the ones we don't, or we can start with the ones we don't, or we're not sure on.
Either way is fine. Does anybody have a proposal on a group they want to include or exclude?
Well, in reviewing the RQAW proposal for the extension, looking at their cost schedule, I think that's outside the scope of what our budgets have been approved to be, right? So,
Eliminate that.
yeah, I mean, I think their base proposal for PE services is almost 4 times our allotted amount, plus their construction is almost double. So,
Makes sense to me.
yeah, I propose we exclude them just because of that.
What I propose that we do is we put a slate together. Rhonda, does this have to be voted upon? Because this isn't a formal decision. Okay. So let's get a slate together and then make sure we agree on the slate.
Okay.
Who else? From my perspective, I think Triad has to be in, because on the other end of the scale, they're the lowest bidder on all the projects. And I didn't see any exclusionary in terms of their context. Anybody disagree?
No, I
Nope.
agree.
And they would be in for both.
Yes.
Sounds good.
I'd also propose Troyer being in for both.
I completely agree for Troyer on the master plan.
Okay.
Now, perhaps, again, I was confused when, for the Greenway extension, I was looking at the cost. I felt that they were giving us an estimate of what would be the construction cost, but I didn't see the bid for design and engineering.
We did give an estimate on the construction cost.
Yeah, that they did. I don't remember where it's at.
And I would say that that's an estimate because you're still determining some of the scope. We're going to see if some of these things can be constructed based on your selected criteria.
Right. Did
So-
the estimate that you provided include design and engineering?
I'm not looking at it right now, but I thought you read that amount off earlier.
165, 862, I think what Rob read.
Yeah, but that was for the 2-inch asphalt cost. So I guess, yeah, your question is, does that include the design? What is the design and engineering or planning cost?
Rob did read that, I think.
No, Mike's right. I did the 165, 862.
Yeah, so,
I know that as we assembled these, we did get some sub-consultant costs in there, so I know that we were pursuing the design and survey and bidding and CA fees as part of that, but I don't. I'd still have to pull up our proposal to see what was all included in that.
So I think we're still at the standpoint of, do we want to interview them? If we interview them, we can nail down any of those issues as part of the interview process.
yep.
So in terms of the master plan, that leaves both McKenna and TSW as possibilities. Does anybody want to argue?
We're in the
for or
master
against?
plan? Okay.
Oh, I was started on Chinworth, did I? I guess it makes sense. So
Uh,
we have, that leaves only JPR as one to consider for Chinworth. Thoughts from anybody on inclusion or exclusion of JPR?
I would actually, I'm a little, I think I'm leaning towards interviewing them because I have a lot of questions.
That's fair, that's fair.
So if that makes sense,
I think so, Mike.
right? Because there's not a lot of, a lot of qualifications are in here, not a lot of detail, but I think really understanding what was part of their proposed fees and how it fits in, I have questions on.
It's good.
Okay. So then on the Chinworth plan, we're going to talk to Triad, Troyer, and JPR, and we've excluded RQAW.
And this is Scott Clay with RQAW. Not sure if I could jump in or not, if it's appropriate now.
Probably not, based upon the approach we're now taking of not asking further questions.
Okay. I just wanted to mention there might be a reason why there's such a large gap in construction cost. And there really shouldn't be a large gap in construction cost. And I think that's something else that should be investigated.
Well, and we're not bidding the construction at this time. We just asked people for general ideas. That's not something we're going to let as part of this project. And looking through the bids, everybody has a different idea on what exactly they want us to build and the level to which they build. So we appreciate everybody who gave us those ideas for cost to get started with. But I am not including, and I would ask the board members not to include the prospective construction costs in their concepts for this. Just looking at the design and engineering and even their RQAWs is the most expensive from that aspect.
Yep.
So master plan, then we've already included Troyer and Triad. That leads us to discuss McKenna and TSW Cornerstone Structure Point. I will comment, I saw this in here, that the TSW group was the group that did Ford Kosciuszko. That obviously is one of the things that caused the Parks Board to exist at all. I liked what I saw about the Indy plan. I went out to the website and looked at the Indy plan, Full Circle, I think it was called. I like that a lot. I personally would like to talk to them.
Okay. I think the only, well, it can be coming into questions, right? There's a large range in their fees, so.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. That being said, we have McKenna. Does somebody want to talk to what they believe about McKenna? One of the things that I looked at when I saw the McKenna was, I liked how they ran with the idea of a project steering committee, because we had said in some of our meetings that we'd be happy to try to call that steering committee back to order. And I liked the concept they have in that, although I think we as a board agree that even though there might be a steering committee, it's largely going to be between us and the commissioners and council in terms of how this goes down.
Yeah, I think my perspective on them, which this is just a comment, is that they seem very capable in terms of what they're proposing and experience. Not necessarily have done a lot of work in this area, but I don't think that's an exclusion. You know, I've seen more Michigan-based, but it looks like they've done quite a bit of work similar, at least on a local town level, to what we're proposing. I think the potential gap could be something as broad as a county type proposal, but maybe worth talking to them about that as well.
Yeah, my feeling of all four of the master plan proposals, I'd be interested in meeting with the firms for an interview. I was less confused by what was being proposed, and I felt some of these proposals were just really clearly written to what it was I thought we were asking for.
I felt some of them almost parroted back what we asked for, though. So the interviews will be interesting.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Well, then, we've included everybody but RQAW.
Okay.
Is that what everybody
that's
wishes
fine.
to do?
Yep.
Okay. So I think that we had asked to try to do this all on November 9th. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Now, for basically what we just said, these will be group interviews, not public.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah. And I think we have a room over in the Justice Building, do we not?
yep.
Okay.
9 a.m.
Yeah, and how long do we want to do these? I'm sort of feeling, and I'm certainly open to discussion, we think that each one should be a half hour to 45 minutes long. We then schedule them for an hour to give us a little leeway, ability to
between,
use the restrooms, that kind of stuff in
Right.
between. Does that make sense to everybody?
Well, just to watch out though, we have, I guess we can interview
1, 2, 3, 4,
Like-
5.
the ones that have two proposals in that same time frame.
Yes,
think so.
yeah,
I
yeah,
think
So,
yeah.
but yeah, I think it'd be good to have some time in
Yeah.
between. Just as a point of how we do this, maybe it's a question for Rhonda or Carrie, is how much of these discussions need to be public? Because I feel like we as a board almost need to have, not decision-making discussions, but making sure we're all on kind of the same page.
We cannot get together and discuss substantively what we're going to do except in a private meeting. So a majority of us can never get together and say, let's talk about these bids, which, by the way, we haven't done at this point in
No,
time.
and I
Yeah,
understand
so
that.
I
but-
understand what you're asking, but it's, unless Carrie or Marcia thinks we can do something else, that's my understanding of the open door laws.
And it's not to discuss the bids as much as to discuss the projects, right? And what we, making,
So we'll have some ability as part of this discussion to
do that.
these, but all the discussion about what we're going to do has to be done in the open.
Okay.
Hey, Rob,
Yeah, Carrie?
talking with Marcia, we can, Rhonda chime in as well, but we think you can do an executive session, which you're allowed to do is for personnel and or purchasing.
Okay,
Or closed to the public, which I think when you do the interview process would be similar.
okay,
So, I mean, whether you have another executive session that is then talking about those bids prior to the meeting, you're allowed, you wouldn't be able to make a decision on who you're going to pick at that executive meeting. But you could have discussion amongst yourself, I think. I guess
So-
I'm treading out on ice that I'm not sure how big it is,
Well-
so, but I think that
then
as long
let's,
as you wouldn't make a decision, you know, all votes would have to happen
Yeah.
at a public meeting, but when you're gathering information and trying to understand proposals and what needs to be in the scope or plan, you know, I think those are all things that you could do in that executive session.
well, I think that'd be very helpful for us, because we're going to have to, there's going to be a lot of cogitating after we get done with these interviews about what they all said and what we're looking at and what we're doing. So I think what we probably ought to do is after today, we'll get these scheduled. Am I scheduling those? Are you guys scheduling those? How do we want to do this? Does it, whatever we want to do? Okay.
So what is the time blocks that we're looking at here? So we're
So-
talking about on the 9th, it's beginning at 9, and if we're scheduling an hour per group, what is that, like 6 hours at least?
9,
So we're
10.
Well, it's only 6
11,
groups, but 2 are common, so that'd be at least 4 hours.
4 hours.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right?
So we would have half a lunch break in there too.
Right.
so-
Right. So, what do you guys think about, we could certainly do that executive session as the last hour of the day. I'm not sure I wouldn't want some time to think about these before we did that.
I was thinking even if we had a half an hour before the first one,
Okay?
that could be helpful.
Yeah.
I think we need to develop the course of the interview.
Yeah.
Okay?
And I'm expecting we'll want to ask similar questions to all groups.
I agree.
Yeah.
But then there would also be some follow-up questions specific to each group.
Yeah,
Okay.
And
Then
if
let,
we can develop that, maybe even that morning.
right. And I think that's the benefit and kind of my original ask of getting together to make sure that, yeah, we are,
Is a half hour enough for that? I'm thinking that's not going to be enough.
That's
I'm
probably
thinking
not.
an hour.
Why don't we do an 8 o'clock executive session then, that we'll discuss the context of how we're going to do the bids, or the interviews, and then we'll try to do 9, 10, 11, and 1. Right, because we have 4?
No, we have 5.
We have 5. 9, 10, 11, 1, and 2. And then, do we want to do a further executive session at 3, or do we want to try to find a different date? I'm starting to think, if I'm burning the whole day, I'd rather just burn the whole
Yeah.
day and be ready to go.
Okay,
Yeah.
Does that work for the rest of you?
yeah, I think it will work. I've got to clear my calendar for that.
I'm going to have to clear some stuff too. I can make it work.
Yep.
Okay, that sounds like the plan. Do you guys see any issues with that as a plan? Okay.
Hey, could I ask one question?
Who's speaking, please?
This is Mike Reese with Troyer Group.
Okay.
For the firms that are interviewing for both, would it be possible to have a slightly longer, it probably would need to be double, but maybe just a little bit longer time frame, since we'd be addressing 2 projects and not just one? Or do you think we can fit everything into that hour or similar time frame?
I would hope to fit all those into an hour. I mean, it is sort of design and engineering for both of them, just a different level between the two. So I would hope we could get those done. I'm quite honestly, I've done some of this before for the state. I don't think it's going to take us even 45 minutes. So I
Sure.
think we've built in sufficient time.
Sounds good. Thanks.
Where are we gonna meet?
Not the multipurpose room, so that's on the basement of the Justice
So
Building.
that's where we met for the,
Yes, that's where we had the pre-bid meeting.
Okay.
And those tables and stuff can be rearranged to make it however we want
Okay.
inside there, since we have it booked for the whole day.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
Karen?
the other thing that I would probably ask the bidders, and it can be sent out in their invitation, to just, I think the master plan, I think is pretty clear what's in their scope. I mean, I think that proposal or RFP was pretty clear on what we wanted. But I think on the scope for the actual trail, I guess I would want to make sure they kind of break out what their actual design is. And then I know several of them had like construction cost in there. They had construction, but they also had like engineering construction costs during that. So, watching the construction and making sure.
Construction management.
Right.
Construction management. So I think that we want to make sure we're comparing apples to apples, that if we have their total number, we need an accurate breakdown of what all those components are. Because depending upon the complexity of the project, some of the construction management maybe wouldn't have to happen through an engineering firm. From a cost, I'm just a little concerned, to be honest, on what our costs are and getting a project, in budget for what we've set aside for ARPA funds. I think we're looking good on our master plan, but at the same token, I want to make sure that at the end of this, we have a project we can build and not just, here's a nice set of plans.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. I also think as we then move out of to the actual contracting phase, we need to be able to list what we expect them to do in that contract as well.
Right. I think it's great to have some estimated construction costs, just because we're thinking that we can do this for $750, and they're saying it's gonna be 1.5. We need to rethink this a bit, but.
Right.
The other thing is just, because this isn't an NDOT project, I think the standard at which we're gonna try, we don't wanna build a quality trail, but it doesn't necessarily have to be to an NDOT standard with all the capped material and all your DDEs and everything else that goes into a state project that run the cost up.
Right.
I think there's some homework to be done, talking to Winona Lake and some of the other municipalities. What have they chosen,
Right.
right? And what is working, what's not working?
Because we don't want something that's gonna be cracked and all bumpy in 2 years, but at
Right.
the same token, we're not gonna be driving loaded semi trucks down this highway or down this trail either, so.
We won't be. Hopefully no one else is.
I did happen to notice that on the timelines with some of the bids, that the constructions take place in 2025. Is that okay with our general timeline?
It seems like that was driven as much by permits and such, but,
Right.
you know, I know our discussions were that we thought this could potentially be happening as soon as next year, but I don't, yeah, I think we have to,
And I'm talking about
So,
Chenworth.
Tasha and Rhonda, ARPA has to be totally committed by end of 2024.
Right,
To be spent by end of 26, so.
So
I
we're
mean,
fine.
okay.
And
Okay,
it's,
we are,
is
okay.
it the end of 26 or January 1st, 26?
Okay, great.
Okay.
Okay, thanks for the
So we
clarification.
would be okay. I mean, obviously, we all want to see a shovel in the ground sooner than later,
Yeah.
but at the same token, we just definitely, because once those monies have to be committed by the end of that 24 period, because the county needs to know that they're going to get spent. Otherwise, we could have to return those dollars. So I mean,
Gotcha.
It's going to be imperative that we've got contract and
Right.
contractor, even if the construction doesn't start till 25, we need to have everything contracted
Right.
by the end of 24.
Gotcha.
And quite honestly, we get the design back and we're pretty sure we're not gonna have enough money. We may have time to go out and seek some grants to
Stu,
get
did you
that.
have something?
Right.
I think from our standpoint, if we kept this to what, right now, how you're gonna work with this is a study design for that, because you're gonna find out some unknowns.
Right.
And yes, your costs, you're gonna have to go and apply, because you ask for experience, Brenda experience, all these different funding agencies are gonna have to do it. And those don't always work at the same time.
Yeah.
Have to be spent, yeah, this is you, to yourself.
Right.
And you might have to turn that back, so I don't think you want, if I may just be candid here, in the interview, I think that's kind of tough to ask for all of the firms. If you're gonna ask for construction thing, because you're still gonna get the same, you're gonna get a range.
Yeah.
Right.
So I would think it would just be okay, your qualifications and then your price, whatever you had as far as just the study and design. Just to be fair and to make it easier for yourselves, you said 45 minutes, but that's usually the time limit, because there's usually a scoring thing that everybody scores and I don't do it randomized. That's, I'm talking too much, that's my 2 cents.
Well, as you've heard us say, we're new at this, so we're happy to take your suggestions and advice. That sort of,
Rob,
go ahead.
In the RFP for the Trails Master Plan, an evaluation sheet was included.
Yeah, and that
Do
we
you-
updated that. I will send that out to everybody.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
And do you want us to come into the interviews with those sheets partially completed from our perspective, or at the end of the interviews, do we want to have them completed? Because some of it will be based upon the interview.
Yeah, I think that's up to the individual scorer as to how they wish to
Okay,
do it.
but you don't need it at the beginning of the day, is what you're saying.
Well, I know when I've done bids like this, I've wanted to have a pretty good idea, but I want to make sure I haven't also done it in concrete, and I'm willing to change my mind based
Yeah.
on the interview.
Yeah.
So that's why I said it may be up to the
Okay.
scorer as to how they wish to proceed.
And then for the Greenways extension, there was not an evaluation sheet in the request for qualifications /
Right.
proposal. So if there's one you want us to use,
Yeah, certainly, I think you could look at the framework of the one we're using for the master plan as a template, but that's up to the scorer as well.
okay. And then I had another question. It's my understanding that once the Greenways Extension Trail is in place, it'll be the County Highways Department that will be helping to maintain that area. And a few months ago, Mike and I met with Steve Moriarty, and he offered to be an advisor to us in the process where we are right now. And of course, he looks at these kinds of proposals in his work and has some ideas. And I just wanted to ask if we wanted to invite him to help us in this process in any way. He offered to do that.
I think it's a great idea if he's got the time.
I think there's 2 points where we could, right? Maybe not the whole day, but, you know, the first hour as we're talking through how we, you know, get to the questions we want to ask. And I think one of the key things is getting to consistency. So we, you know, each of the bidders, we understand exactly what they offer, kind of the same framework. But then possibly as a follow-up before the final decision as well. I don't think I would ask him to spend the entire day with us with a week advance, but yeah, I think that could be helpful if he's available.
Do you guys want to reach out to him since you already talked to him once?
Yeah, we
Yeah.
could.
Okay.
And these are public, I
Right.
understand. So
Right.
we could share a set of the proposals.
We could have shared a set with a county employee like that anyway, would be my impression.
Okay, great,
Okay.
thank you.
Yeah. Any other business for today then?
Covered a lot. It's a good meeting.
I think we have covered a lot. I think then that we stand adjourned.
Right?
Great, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, everybody.